All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for today's Lunch and Learn. It's a great honor of mine to introduce Dr. Timothy Hawthorne, a professor and chair of the Department of Geosciences over at Auburn University. Um, if you guys have been following what the association's been doing, it's been one of my goals as president to really kind of bring in the academic community and get them involved and um, learn about the things that they're doing and have ongoing in the geospatial world. And if you've been following the Department of Geosciences on any of their social media, you'll see that they're doing some really cool things. So we asked Dr. Hawthorne to come on and talk a little bit about what they've got going on and his work with community and citizen science and kind of what they see happening throughout the state of Alabama. So um, yeah, I'll just turn it over to Dr. Hawthorne and let him take the floor.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tim Hawthorne. I am chair and professor in the Department of Geosciences here at Auburn University. Thank you all so much for inviting me today. I'm so glad to be a part of this association and to meet many of you. As you probably know, I am new to the state. So I was previously at the University of Central Florida for about 9 years, where I worked really closely with the GIS and drone community there. Including with, I know some of you know the Central Florida GIS workshop outside of Orlando. I worked really closely with them and did a lot of these types of events. So I love this community. I'm excited to be a part of it. I've been at Auburn now since July of 2024, so now just 10 months in. And I just wanted to sort of give you a warm welcome back to our department. I know some of you have been involved. Some of you maybe even got your degrees from our department or other parts of Auburn University. Just want to welcome you back and say that we'd love to make additional connections with our friends in government, industry, and business, and the nonprofit world as well. So again, thank you all. So today what I'd like to do is just share a little bit about some of the approaches that our research team has taken to doing drone and GIS work, and sort of talk, particularly as Justin said, about community-based and citizen science approaches to this work. Also, as Justin mentioned, many of you have saw our work on social media. One of the things that we have been building is our new mobile science lab, the GeoExplorer mobile network of labs. I'm going to share that towards the end as well, so just stay tuned and bear with me with some of the research talk. But I'd love to chat a little bit more in the Q&A about how we could work together with the association to bring this across the state to schools, community events, and things like that as well. So let me just kind of start by talking about the approach that we take to doing drones and GIS-based work. So I have a really great collaborator and friend out of James Cook University in Australia, Dr. Karen Joyce. She and I have done a lot of field work together and a lot of conversations over the year using drones and GIS to look at coastal environments, both here in the US and in her case in Australia, and then also in Belize down in Central America, where I have worked for the last 13 or 14 years. And so one of the things that really struck me in talking to her many years ago was a comment she made, and she said, it's not about the drone. It's not about the maps, right? It's about the partnerships that are built when you use geospatial technologies together. So like many of you in this room, a lot of what we do is very partnership driven. We are not just siloed academics. I know academics get a bad rap, especially in today's really hypercharged climate around the value of higher education and things like that. And I would like to say, I think that one of the reasons for that, it's not actually misplaced upset feelings about the academic world. It's because academics traditionally have not always been the best at engaging with communities, with governments, with industries, and local collaborators as well. And so in the spirit of that, like what I want to talk today about is how we do a lot of partnership driven work. I'll first talk a little bit about some of our research in Belize with students and collaborators in the US and in Belize. And then again, we'll talk at the end about GeoExplorer mobile labs as well. So what I want to kind of couch this in, it is participatory methods, particularly with drones and GIS. So for our team, the way we kind of approach our work is recognizing that we're trying to create a framework for academics to work more holistically with partners across industry, nonprofits, and at the community or neighborhood level as well, right? So this for us is really about using geospatial technologies for good, using them in ways that support all the interesting environmental and social challenges that are happening around the globe. as well. So I make the important distinction that when we do academic-based research as a group, in the group that I lead here at Auburn and previously led in my previous place at University of Central Florida, it's working with communities and with community partners rather than just in a community, right? And so I know many of us do drone GIS mapping and surveying work where you end up in the middle of a town and you may or may not meet anyone and talk with them, or you might get yelled at because they're wondering what you're doing, right? And I think what I would say in the work that we do, we try to engage in those conversations with folks on the ground because we recognize they have a lot of knowledge about the environmental and social challenges that we're looking at as well. So this talk is really going to start by talking about our approach to participatory science using drones and GIS. So that will take us to a research group I founded back in 2016 when I was at University of Central Florida called Citizen Science GIS. We are an Esri Special Achievement Award winner from many years ago. And I think the reason for that recognition is because we do work that is focused on geospatial technologies that allows scientific researchers to work in accessible and understandable ways that is partnership driven with communities across the globe. And again, today I'll talk a little bit about some of this work we've done in Belize with our US partners as well. So I'm going to take you to Belize for a moment, and then we'll come back to Auburn in a couple moments as well, virtually. So we've had the great privilege up until about a year ago to host a National Science Foundation research experiences for undergraduates and teachers training program that at the time was housed at the University of Central Florida and also did fieldwork in Belize. So we were able to pay US students and K through 12 teachers to engage in learning how to use geospatial technologies for science, but importantly, doing that in a way that allowed them to do international fieldwork with partners and engage in, basically fieldwork and experiential learning that allowed them to take their classroom knowledge into learning experiences out in the field to prepare them for the future of the geospatial technology industry, whether that was in industry or nonprofit world or in the academic world or some combination of those as well. And so in the work, what we try to do is we provided funded research experiences through our NSF grant to work with a small coastal fishing village called Hopkins Village, Belize. The idea behind this work was to show students the ability to use geospatial technologies to understand coastal changes in Belize, but then also to apply those same understandings to their work in the United States in places like University of Central Florida and other universities that they visited from as well. And so our team in each summer consisted from anywhere from 10 to 15 students that worked with us through our NSF funding for our US students. And then our University of Belize students were funded by additional partnerships outside of our US funding as well, through Belizean partnerships and additional funding partnerships outside of that grant as well. And so our team spent about a month in the US and then a similar set of time in Belize to do this field work. And so there were 4 pillars that really drove this work and continue to drive the work that we do here in the US as well. First and foremost is recognizing when we fly our drones and we do our community-based mapping, that we want to not just be in a community, but work with the community to engage in community-based science, because we recognize, like we're seeing in this picture here, that in this example, it's a local watershed board. They're mapping challenges to coastal erosion in their community from their memory and their experience living in this coastal changing environment. The second component of our work is to recognize that not everyone has a degree in geospatial technologies, drones, or GIS, but there is an opportunity to give rudimentary training where asked for in some of these technologies. So here we're giving an example where our teammates are sharing drone training with a then DJI Phantom 4 with a local Red Cross representative that worked in the country of Belize and also worked with the US Embassy and the Red Cross to provide disaster management photography after a major flooding event, as an example. The third is recognizing that all the knowledge that one has from living in a community or a neighborhood can be mapped, right? It isn't just the official quantitative statistical data sets that we can get from sites like Esri's ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World or ArcOnline, other types of data like that. It's also stuff that community members know about where flooding is, for example, or where beach debris is, or where erosion is, right? And so we really emphasize understanding and mapping these stories of cultural and coastal and community change in the work that we do as well. And then the final component of our work is recognizing that in being good stewards of science, what we try to do is engage our youth, not in the research, but in educational outreach that allows students to see the future of science with geospatial technologies. Because as many of us on this call know, most students don't leave high school thinking they want to become geographers, surveyors, or drone pilots, right, or environmental planners, but they become interested in that as they become exposed to the technologies and to the classes and the work that we all do as geospatial scientists as well. And so we do a lot of education outreach, which is where we'll get into that discussion in a little bit about our mobile science lab as well. And so let me take you to Hopkins Village. This is Hopkins Village, Belize. You can see to the right of this image on the east is the Caribbean Sea. And then to the west in the image, you see a lagoon and a savanna. And then to the immediate west past there, off of the image, you also have the mountains of Belize. And so this ecosystem and this watershed makes this village really challenging for coastal flooding issues because water is coming, running downhill, right? It's coming into the village. It's also coming in from increasingly strong storms that are coming in tropical storm season and hurricane season as well. And so this village is really vulnerable to different changing weather conditions. And also that's exacerbated by sort of economic challenges in the village as well. And so on the image you see here, right in the center of it, you have sort of the traditional village where most residents live. And then to the north and south ends of this image, you actually have some of the newer developments, the more expensive homes for expats from the US, Canada, and Europe, and then also some of the bigger resorts in the community as well. And so there's some economic inequality and disparities that make some of these environmental challenges even more challenging in a community that is experiencing more flooding. And so our team was invited to work with this community as part of a longstanding partnership between our US university at the time and our Belize University and the nonprofit organizations that they work with to engage in drone mapping and what we call participatory sketch mapping to understand flood risk management in a community that didn't necessarily have access to all of the great data that we have access to in a place like Auburn, Alabama, where I'm located. And so from there, what we tried to do is we combined some existing data sets, but also tried to enhance those data sets with participatory sketch mapping, which I'll talk about in a moment, to identify where flooding vulnerabilities were in the village. And so we did a 3-step process to collect our data with our team here and others. First, we flew DJI Phantom drones to collect on-demand high-resolution imagery of village infrastructure and changing networks within the village. Secondly, we did a boots-on-the-ground fieldwork assessment, creating a parcel map with a land cover analysis and also an infrastructure analysis of the building conditions within this community as well for about 1,000 to 1,500 buildings. And then the third component was talking with community members to actually map their experiences and their memories of flooding. And so I'm going to talk about each of those methods and how they interact with one another together. And so first, here is the drone mapping work. For the drone users in the room, you recognize the importance of drone work is twofold. It gets you under the clouds. It allows you to do high resolution imagery and allows you to do that near real-time assessment that you need in conversations around flooding, for example, in the work that we do as well. So this is our team out flying the drones with community leaders, with Red Cross representatives to understand the base level data that we have for the community. From there, prior to the beginning of really more complex and user-friendly models around GeoAI, we actually did heads-up digitizing digitally with all of the buildings previously in the year 2016 and onward in this village to create an infrastructure map of all the buildings in the community from those digital representations from our orthomosaics, but also in consultation with using field maps and then previously collector in ArcGIS as well in the field to do infrastructure assessment as well. And so here we have the orthomosaic, and then we also have the individual buildings that I just showed on the previous slide. For each building, we looked at creating an attribute table for all of the infrastructure in the community in relation to flooding. We looked at things like type of construction, elevation above sea level, position to relative surroundings, occupancy status, land use, number of stories on the building, and also whether or not it was completed as well, to create a detailed inventory of vulnerability for infrastructure related to flooding in the community. The next component of the work that we did is we went into the community and talked with community members about drawing their experience of flooding. So imagine for the 20 or 30 people on this call, if I asked each of you to draw your experiences of flooding across the state of Alabama. Each of you would have a radically different experience with flooding, but if we took all of those flooding polygons together, we would be able to create a pretty nice aggregate map of those union polygons to show flooding experiences across the state. And we could keep adding to that with more participants after a meeting like this. And so that was the spirit of what we engaged with community members through participatory sketch mapping. So this is an example of one of the early pilot studies in the work. In this map, what I want to point your attention to is that idea of we had individuals map polygons, right? We said, tell us where you've experienced flooding. Some people mapped really localized flooding in their yards or in their sort of segments of their street. Others mapped flooding just as a community-wide problem. And so this map is an aggregation of all the union polygons from 62 interviews to give you a sense of where the consensus was around flooding in the village. And so you can quickly see here in the darkest blue representation color hues that that is where the most overlapping polygons were presented. If you think about this in relation to that aerial photo I showed you earlier from our drone imagery, this is exactly where I was pointed to in that drone imagery, the most vulnerable part of the community when you look at our drone imagery because of its location between the lagoon and the Caribbean Sea, and some of the lowest lying buildings in the community. And so this sort of complements some of that existing data that we collected as well. And so this, coupled with the drone imagery and the infrastructure assessment with collector and survey 123 and field maps, allowed us to give a really clear understanding of where flood vulnerability was in the community from a perspective of using participatory methods with geospatial technologies and drones specifically. And so that's a little bit about Belize. Now what I'd like to do is kind of get you to what I know many of you were here to hear about, which is how we approach engaging with communities to enhance the next generation of science and technology with geospatial technologies. So as part of my work as a professor, but also as a National Geographic Explorer for many years, I've had the really great opportunity to engage with K-12 teachers, students that are becoming teachers, and also informal science educators through museums and libraries and community centers that always talk about wanting to use things like GIS and mapping and drones, but they don't have the expertise to do so, or they don't have the income to provide fancy drones, small mini drones to their kids. And so what I've done over the years is worked with different agencies, different funders, different donors to create sort of a science on wheels platform that allows us to take all of our cool technologies and our staff out to communities here in the US, but also in places like Belize and other parts of the world where we're beginning to work to engage the next generation in exposing them to geospatial technologies in their communities. And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce you to the most recent work in this area. As I mentioned, I moved to Auburn back in the summer of 2024, just recently. But prior to that, I'd been working for about 7 years with your colleagues in the Central Florida GIS Workshop and other GIS leaders in the state of Florida, including Kim Jackson, the GIO of Florida at the time as well, to create a mobile science lab that was focused specifically on geospatial technologies. And we were very fortunate to create, with no budget and sort of no real plan, in about 5 years during the pandemic, a mobile science lab called GeoBus. And that was based at University of Central Florida until I left back last summer. That program, in a short amount of time, in about 2 years of operations after the pandemic, served about 7,000 students and families across the state, exposing them to interactive lab learning activities inside an old city bus that was donated to us by a bus company in Orlando that was outfitted with solar, had things like an augmented reality sandbox, an interactive mapping wall, and a series of different mapping and GIS and drone focused activities for students and families to get exposed to the technologies that we all use in our academic work and in industry, nonprofit, and business work as well. And so when I had the good fortune of joining Auburn as the new chair of the Department of Geosciences, one of the things that I told our dean was that we needed to invest in supporting the future of geospatial technology and more broadly the geosciences in earth system science, geology, geography, and environmental studies across the state of Alabama. Because as you know, working in this association, not all students necessarily know of these opportunities early on. And so luckily, as part of my startup package, our dean here in the College of Sciences, Dean Edward Thomas, was able to provide a really solid nest egg to allow us to create in a warp speed time from December to March, the largest geosciences themed mobile science lab in the entire world, now on a 36-foot Class A RV that was done in partnership with several local partners, including Bama RV, a local company in Opelika, and Dothan, Alabama, and also Advanced Graphics and a graphics company here, and several other technology partners that work with us here in the Department of Geosciences and in our College of Sciences Math to quickly bring on a similar but different mobile science lab experience to the state of Alabama. So I'm pleased to say that we are now on the road in our preview mode, touring and learning more about how we can deliver this type of geospatial technology and geoscience themed content to students and teachers in schools and community partners across the state of Alabama. And so our goal, and we launched in March with our preview events, this summer in June, we will be officially complete with all of the interior construction on the mobile lab. And then from there, I know many of you are going out to the Esri User Conference and the Education Summit in San Diego this July. We will actually be taking a road trip across the country, hitting different stops along the way to do pop-up events in different states with Auburn and Alabama alumni to engage in conversations about how to scale this up in the state of Alabama, but also in a way to create a network of these across the country that is led by Auburn University in partnership with other schools and organizations across the US. So this is the first of a planned set of 10 mobile science labs that we hope to create in the next 5 years. And we'll be launching, sort of our big launch will be at the Esri User Conference and the Education Summit this July. I've also been in talks with Justin and others in this group about coming to some of your events in the fall. We are really excited to do that, and we'll work out the details as well. But what I'd like to do in the next couple of slides before I end with some discussion and questions is to kind of show you of what is inside and what we're trying to do with this mobile science lab. And I know many on this call are excited because I've seen some of your comments and reshares on social media of the work that we've shared already. And so inside, we'll have a variety of things that mimic what we did in our mobile science lab when I was in Florida. We'll have an interactive touchscreen mapping environment that will allow children to engage with ArcGIS Online, Google Earth, and other mapping platforms. We'll have an augmented reality sandbox that will allow them to learn about elevation and topography and contours and flooding. We'll have block coding experiences. We'll also have basic map reading skills and 3D design elements as well. So this is GeoExplorer Auburn. We had several test events already in the short month that we've been on the road in our preview mode, including at the Alabama Science and Engineering Fair for the state that was here a couple weeks ago at Auburn University. In just a short few weeks, we've already served about 700 students and families in just a handful of events. I think we've had 3 events. And so the potential impact and reach of this we're expecting is going to be anywhere from 10 to 15,000 youth scientists, schools, and community partners in any given calendar year through a series of school visits. What we will plan to be doing beginning in September, when the new school year begins here in Alabama schools, we will be visiting 2 to 3 days a week to different schools across the state. When we start in September, we'll focus mainly within an hour of the Auburn region. But then as we literally get our wheels under us on the road, we're going to be going to other portions of the state, including visits down south to the coast and throughout the state. We've already been getting requests for that. So we're going to be opening up a scheduling pool for priority scheduling for these school visits later this summer as well. So let me take you inside to a couple of the things that are in the works right now that are almost complete in our existing GeoExplorer mobile lab. As I mentioned, we have an augmented reality sandbox that has been tested and is getting its best feedback. We also have a mini drone experience outside of the RV that will be done either outside in a school property or inside one of their classroom or multimedia centers. That will use Code EDU mini drones that are kid safe and also connected to STEM robotics and block coding, and also scripted coding for more advanced students as well. We also have augmented reality adventures where students are allowed to see different experiences here in Alabama and other parts of the US and the world to understand and compare and contrast different landscapes and issues around the globe using Oculus Quest 3 virtual reality goggles as well. We also have a microscope lab that allows students to look at everything from fossils to water quality samples to sand particles. You name it, we have it in our sampling plans with these microscopes as well. And then from there, we're also adding a stream table that will allow students to engage in understanding water flow through a water ecosystem. We're adding a fossil dig site that will allow students to map and understand fossils that are prominent throughout the state and also other parts of the world as well. And in addition, we're adding several additional touch screens that will allow for some additional interactive displays and learning activities. Everything that we do with our GeoExplorer mobile science lab is connected to Alabama state content standards for educators. So that allows us to enter into the school system and partnerships with our schools across the state to ensure that our content aligns with what the teachers are testing and expecting of their students as well. And this is a key priority for us that allows us to be more than an outside activity, but allows us to be part of the school day. As part of our infrastructure, we also have been creating pre and post data collection experiences where we're able to understand what the knowledge of different geospatial and GIS, drone, and geoscience learning activities are prior to our arrival. So we can spit out, after a couple days of visits, we can tell a school what the learning gains are from the data that we collect pre and post visit in the infrastructure we're creating through a series of interactive lessons that are being created by our team as well. And so this has been a really interesting partnership, working not only with folks here at Auburn University, we've been working with Esri and other big industry partners. We've talked with the association and others about partnering as well. And so the idea of this is to be a giant public-private partnership that starts in Alabama and then broadly expands beyond the US, but it's based here at Auburn University. And the goal is really simple. In the spirit of a group like this, it's about allowing people to understand the importance of geospatial technologies, the importance of the geosciences more broadly across our great state, but also to other states and other places around the globe as well. And so that's what it's about. It's about connecting the next generation to the things that we are all passionate about as career users of these technologies as well. And so what I'd like to do there is I'd like to close just by saying I'm really grateful that you all have given me the chance to kind of chat. I also know many of you are interested in exploring how to bring the GeoExplorer mobile lab to your neck of the woods here across Alabama. And I know some of you are in the position to have potential partnerships with industry or government agencies to offer small support for smaller school visits or broader support. We do have naming opportunities at various capacities, and we're looking to build these partnerships to sustain the long term of this work, so the costs are not always put on the schools, but can be provided through industry and community public partnerships as well. So with that, I will close, and I will thank you for your attention. And now, with Justin's permission and the rest of the leadership group, I'm open for conversation and a dialogue. That's my favorite part of these conversations. So I'm open to a discussion now, friends. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. We'll open the floor up if anybody has any questions or comments. I think you're muted by default, so you'll want to check your mic. And there's a question in the chat. How can we find out how to request a bus visit?
Yeah, hi, Jeanette. Thank you for your question, and nice to meet you virtually. So with this, what we're going to be doing, so we do have a website. It's called geoexplorerlabs.org. It is linked in the QR code I just said. I'll put it in the chat as well. The website right now is kind of a shell of a website, but later in mid-June, as we go on the road, and then in July when we get to the Esri road trip across the West, we will be putting out a scheduling priority link, and that will basically go to a Survey 123 form, and we'll allow you or a school to request a visit. And then from there, what we're going to do, we know we're going to have more demand than we can handle. We're going to sort of start thinking through our priority scheduling and seeing, if there's a pocket of schools on the west side of the state, could we sort of have a coordinated effort where we come for a week rather than a day, and then stay overnight somewhere as well. So there will be a scheduling link that will go up on the website later this summer, about probably around July 1st, I would say.
We have another question in the chat. Fletcher asks, what age group of children?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Fletcher. Thanks for the question, and thanks for attending and for all you do for geospatial tech. So right now, one of the things that we've started, and this is something I learned in Florida, is we can't be everything for everyone early with the demand that is had. So what we are starting with is we're targeting for our school visits 3rd through 6th grade. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of literature in the science education literature that says around 5th grade is where students really develop their sense of self and their sense of a science identity. And so we're targeting that area to start because that is where we get our most requests, but also for those reasons. And then what we're working on that we should be able to have for Q3 and Q4 of the next fiscal year is high school visits and upper middle school visits. And then we're going to work downward to some of the lower grades as well. But for that first part, it's going to be those upper elementary, early middle school grades. And then we'll work both upward and downward as well. Those are for the school visits. But then additionally, we also do more informal open house events. So like, let's say you have a GIS day event that can be open to everybody. It doesn't just have to be in that target age range. Or you have a community festival on a weekend. We can have those types of open house events that are open to just everybody. They're just slightly different than the more structured school visits that we have as well. But those are also equally fun and exciting for all age levels as well. Jeanette had a follow-up question, I think, as well about will they be available to public and private schools? Absolutely, yes. We will be open to any school. And we also, I know there's probably some homeschool parents on here. One of the things we were able to do in Florida when I built this previously is sometimes homeschool networks, in addition to public and private schools, have networks. And so we can tailor, if there's a network of schools, either public or private, or even homeschools, we can get together to create sort of a clustered group visit, to another part of the state, say like Tuscaloosa, for example, or down on Gulf Shores. We could make that work across a few visits or a few days of visits to make it, more palatable for us to drive that big thing all the way down to the other part of the states as well. But we are open to all schools for sure. Yeah, great question. So Christopher Graff is asking in the chat about how we're using this to prepare Auburn Geosciences students and how they're participating. Yeah, thanks so much for that. I glossed over that really quickly, Christopher, and thanks for all you do. So with this, one of the really nice things and part of our funding model and our partnership model is to recognize that our students and in the college setting are our staff, right? So when we go to school visits, this will be staffed not only by faculty, but more importantly, it'll be staffed by our college students, giving them additional training in working with children, but also in working on fieldwork projects in local communities and with local schools. So all of our students at the college level that work in our project are funded at an hourly rate or through a graduate research assistantship if they're graduate students to be paid to get their first set of experiences in geospatial technologies. One. The second way they'll do this is they'll also be part of publications and conference presentations and events like this to share out some of the outcomes of the learning data that we receive and some of the projects that we do as well. So absolutely, we are working to prepare our college students to engage with the work as well, because that's a big component of what we do. So thanks for that, Christopher.
Randy Miller has their hand raised. Randy, if you want to unmute yourself, feel free.
Yeah.
I loved your presentation, and I have been very excited since I have seen this bus on social media. I am very active in the community and trying to teach kids about GIS and introduce them to it. The problem that I have is always finding material or hands-on STEM stuff for the kids. Is there any way that I could schedule? Because I have some people that are willing to volunteer, but if I could get assistance or help, like even providing the material, because I know that you're going to be swamped. So for GIS Day, I really like to do this, but if you guys would love like to come up to North Alabama and show this off and also show young children, but I also was interested in maybe partnering with you on providing material so that way I can do this in North Alabama as well and just do like a little partnership. Maybe is that something that you guys would do, or is that something that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Randy, and thanks for that. I think partnership is what drives this, and I think volunteering. I know many people often need GISP credits for their service requirements or other sort of professional organization service requirements. So when we did this in Florida, we had a similar program where we could have professionals be volunteers. You know, it could be dependent on their visits. Like maybe it's a one and done kind of thing on a Saturday at a GIS day or something like that. Or maybe it's something longer term. Yes, absolutely. We can do that volunteering. The only requirement of that is they would have to go through a background check to work with children because of the liability reasons for the university. But that's pretty easy to do.
Oh, yeah.
I think those are, you know, it's like a small $25 fee, that kind of thing. But that's something we absolutely want to incorporate into this because, as you know, in working with kids and teachers, like the more they see us doing these careers, the more that matters to the teachers and the parents to be like, oh, you can do that and make money doing this. That's great, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's a big component, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to our conversation.
And to that, I'll also, Randy, I'll put my email in here for you and everyone. If anyone is interested in the volunteering or partnering kind of stuff, just shoot me a message, and then, you know, we can work over the summer to kind of talk through what some of those things might look like. As well. We're always excited to partner with folks in their time and talents. And also if there are funding partnerships available too, that would be wonderful as well.
Does anyone else have any questions? This is fantastic conversation. Feel free to post in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask away.
I guess last question. Have you set up before at a children's museum for like a GIS day or anything like that?
We have done, not yet in Alabama, but we have done Orlando, where I was, had the Orlando Science Center. So we did a couple of events with them and they were fantastic. I think they're very open house oriented. The biggest challenge with those events is the amount of people that want to get into it. It's hard to manage the crowds. But that's a good problem to have, right? Because everybody wants it. So we definitely are open to those types of events through partnerships with different museums and science centers. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Shelby says he'd like to see the bus outside the GIS Conference of Alabama in November.
You know, I feel like Justin and I may have talked about this, my friend. So.
We have, yeah, we have. That usually, so that's not a conference that we run. We support and sponsor that. That's put on by the state. But yeah, I know Phil Henderson has mentioned getting the bus down here as well. So it is kind of in the works. It corresponds with GIS Day every year. And I think they have sent out some information for this year's conference already, but yeah, we would love to see that as well.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, that conference is down at Gulf State Park and Gulf Shores each year. It's I forget the dates exactly, but it's middle of November. I think the 16th, the week of the 15th, 16th time frame.
Yeah, and if there's a way to partner to make that happen with you all and others, we would love to do that. You know, Justin and I have talked casually about this, but I think that would be great exposure and just a community building event. So we'd love to be down there. So we'll talk separately about that, Justin, and getting in connection with those guys. And then Stephanie, yes, absolutely. Count us in for GIS Day festivities. We'll talk more. And I know Stephanie's already got to see the preview day at the State Science and Engineering Fair a couple weeks back, but we're looking forward to continuing to work with you all here in the Auburn Opelika region as well.
You know, I'll always say I'm a proud Bama alum, and I love the tide. But what you guys are doing is fantastic, and it really is going to be an asset for our state. And look forward to seeing all the good work coming out of the plains. Tim, I have a question that I like to ask people that present for us, and I'm just hoping that you could give us a little bit of advice or a nugget to students or young professionals that are interested in like emerging science and geospatial technologies and social impact. What would that little nugget be?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So many nuggets. I think, all right. The most important thing, as I would say, is take a chance and get outside, right? I think many of us, we got into this field because of the opportunity to work out in the environment. And now many of us work behind the computer screen on a most of a day-to-day basis. But the idea of being able to do field work, and particularly for young college students, I always say, like, everybody that's applying for these jobs in geospatial tech, they all have great degrees, they all have great grades, but what separates the really well-prepared students for the job market, whether that's in industry, nonprofit, or government, or in the academic world, is those experiences where they take that theory and that classroom learning into action. And so often for me, that's in field work, right? So like our students that have worked in Belize and worked with us on the West Coast of the US and other places in Florida and now here in Alabama, I think why they are more prepared for success in their careers is because they can take complex data, they can create it, they can clean it, and they can analyze it, right? And it's not that prepackaged data you might get through any vendor's prepackaged lessons, right? Those are challenging on their own, but like to actually see the messiness of fieldwork data from start to finish and planning out that project management, even if it's like a small, weekend project or a summer project or something like that, that I think the more students can get those experiences early, the better. Because again, like you all know this, I've done GIS work outside of the academic space. The boss walks in on a Monday and says, hey, we got this problem. We got to go map, storm drains this week. And that's it. That's all they say, right? And you walk away and you say, now what do I do? Right? And you figure it out when the boss comes back next Monday. And so I think that's what students need to be able to do, is think on their feet and be able to go from like idea conceptualization to execution and like communication, right? And that's where I think the best students really stand out. And I'm sure many of you have hired those students and you know what I'm talking about as well. But that would be my best advice. Get outside and do the things, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Plus you're outside, so
Yeah.
that's a benefit. Yeah, very good. Well, thanks again. Thanks for your time. Really do appreciate it. I don't know. Peyton dropped in the chat. He said the conference is November 17th through 20th at the Lodge at Gulf State Park down here in beautiful Baldwin County. So we're hoping for no rain this year. It's been kind of rainy the last couple years, but yeah, looking forward to seeing you all at that. And also stay tuned to the website and your notifications. We have a few more of these lunch and learns that are in the works upcoming in the next couple of weeks and months. So look for that. And if there's nothing else, we can call it a day. And thanks again to you, Dr. Hawthorne.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the weekend. And if you have any graduating students, congratulations. I'm heading to graduation in a little bit. So thanks, everybody, and see you all soon.
Beautiful. Thanks, y'all. Bye.